It is time to go in depth on trade. Trump's promise to put America first and how this will affect you. And joining us now to break all of that down is Newsmax analyst and National Review foreign affairs correspondent and a friend of the show, John Fund. John, good to see you. Nice to see you here today. I suspect, but maybe I'm wrong, that you are not a fan of the tariffs that he imposed.
I'm not a fan of tariffs in general, but I understand what the president is trying to do here. These litigations were launched when Obama was still president. They had to go before the International Trade Commission. They finally rendered a ruling. The president is simply ratifying the ruling, saying that United States manufacturers no longer can survive unless they have tariffs. I don't favor the tariffs, but I do understand what the president's bully stick has done. It's forced these manufacturers to accelerate their plans to build plants here and hire Americans here. As long as this doesn't become a disease, as long as it's simply one or two exceptions to the rule that we should have free trade, I'm not going to get up in arms about this. The real issue is NAFTA. I think we do have to renegotiate NAFTA. I think we have to make NAFTA fair, and I think the president is in the 5th round of talks on NAFTA. I hope that we get an agreement, because it would be a disaster if we actually pulled out of NAFTA and didn't renegotiate it.
Yeah. Well, John, do you agree with me that the president has done powerful things to give us trade advantages on the right side of the equation, meaning make the United States a friendlier place to do business and to hire people?
That's the most important thing you can do to get rid of these trade barriers and trade inequities. Tariffs may have to be used. Remember, they're in the law. The president has to, at some point, decide whether or not our trade laws mean anything. And certainly the Chinese, who have been engaged in wholesale. Well, the real problem with overseas trade is the Chinese are terrible stealers of intellectual property. There's nothing we make that they don't steal.
And
so
we
eventually have to confront them on that. But in general, I think the president has been much more reasoned and measurable, and also much more results-oriented. You don't slap tariffs on people just to punish consumers. You slap tariffs on people to encourage foreign companies to come here, and just as the auto companies eventually did. The Japanese, the Germans, they all make their cars here.
Yeah, and that did not happen by accident. That happened because during the Reagan administration, the Japanese car makers were selling a lot of cars in America.
Because American cars weren't very good.
And American cars weren't very good, but Reagan and his administration went to the Japanese and said, you cannot send any more cars here unless you build plants here. And the Japanese automakers.
And they all built them in right-to-work states. They were not going to cite them in upstate New York, sadly, because, of course, the labor laws and the labor.
One of our problems.
Exactly. Well, 28 states now have right-to-work laws, and guess what? All of the foreign auto manufacturers are in those states. They're not in the 22 states where the labor unions have excessive clout.